Why real love demands brutal honesty, even when it hurts. When truth feels like a crime. Hello, my friend. Before we start, hit subscribe if you want real conversations that make you braver, not just more comfortable. Today we talk about the most expensive currency in modern love: truth. Why is it that telling the truth can feel like betrayal? Why does honesty sometimes trigger silence, tears, or a week of cold distance? Why do so many couples say they want openness, yet punish it the moment it arrives? You have seen this dance. A partner asks a question that is not looking for information. It is looking for protection. Do I look good in this? Do you still feel the same way about me? Would you ever be with someone like her or him? On the surface, these are simple questions. Underneath, they are exams about loyalty, safety, and power. The answer is not being graded for accuracy. It is being graded for how well it preserves a feeling. Here is the tension no one wants to admit. People are not only afraid of lies, they are terrified of truths that demand change. A truth about health requires discipline. A truth about money requires new habits. A truth about respect requires boundaries. Facing reality costs energy, pride, and comfort. Avoiding reality offers instant relief. That is why comfortable answers are so tempting. That is why small lies multiply. But every time you trade truth for peace, the price is your self-respect. You chip away at the part of you that knows what is real. You train yourself to speak in ways that keep the room calm but keep your soul unsettled. You stop asking, what is true? You start asking, what will hurt the least? That is how people drift from themselves while staying in the same relationship. Some questions are not questions. They are fears wearing questions as masks. Am I enough? Will you abandon me? Am I safe with the real you? When we do not know how to speak our needs with courage, we turn to traps, tests, and theatrics. We ask you to read our mind. We punish your accuracy. We reward your compliance. Then we wonder why we cannot trust each other. There is another layer. Many of us have learned to weaponize honesty. We say, be real with me, and then save every vulnerable detail like ammunition for future fights. We yell about wanting transparency and then use transparency to draw blood. What do we teach our partner? We teach them that silence is safer than truth. We teach them that closing up is self-defense. We teach them to disappear while still being present. If you have lived this, you know the exhaustion. You know the quiet calculation before you answer. You know the feeling of walking through an emotional minefield with your tongue. You know the guilt of lying to keep the peace and the shame of telling the truth and losing it. You may have asked yourself a hard question. Is there any way to be honest without burning everything down? Yes, but it requires a different agreement. It requires two adults who can hear discomfort without exploding. It requires clarity about needs instead of traps. It requires boundaries, not threats. It requires the courage to say, I want reassurance, rather than answer this impossible question. It requires the integrity to say, I will not lie to make today easier and tomorrow harder. If you are tired of performance and hungry for reality, if you are ready to stop choosing between lying and warfare, stay with me. In the next part, we will take the mask off this dynamic. We will examine why people punish honesty, how tests and traps are born, and what it does to the nervous system when truth becomes dangerous. Then we will build a way out. Calm, firm, respectful, no theater, only truth with skill. Why we punish honesty in love. Let's be honest for a second. Most people say they want truth, but what they really want is comfort wearing truth's mask. We crave validation, not confrontation. We crave the warmth of reassurance, not the chill of reality. That's why when someone finally dares to speak the truth, it feels like an earthquake shaking the illusion we built to stay safe. Think about this. When a man tells his partner she has changed, he isn't attacking her, he's describing what he sees. But if she's tied her worth to staying forever young, his words don't land as information, they land as rejection. When a woman tells her partner he's distant, she's not being dramatic, she's trying to reach him. But if he's built his identity around being the strong, silent one, her truth sounds like an accusation. In both cases, the truth threatens the image, and we protect our image more fiercely than we protect love itself. People punish honesty because honesty threatens identity. It exposes the gap between who we think we are and who we've become. It forces us to admit that our comfort has turned into decay, that our routines have replaced our passion, that our excuses have grown louder than our growth. Facing that is terrifying. So instead of facing it, we fight the messenger. Here's the irony. When we attack the person telling us the truth, we feel powerful for a moment, but weaker in the long run. We silence the truth teller, and then wonder why the world feels fake. We demand loyalty, but we don't realize loyalty built on fear isn't loyalty. It's quiet slavery. I once coached a man who said, "I can't tell my wife how I really feel anymore. Every time I do, she breaks down." He didn't want to lie, but he was tired of walking through emotional fire every time he opened his mouth. So he stopped talking. Years later, she told him, "You've changed, you don't talk to me anymore." But what she never understood was that she had trained him to be silent. Each tear, each explosion, each punishment for truth became a lesson. Honesty equals danger. And this happens everywhere. At home, at work, with friends. We say, "I want feedback," but what we mean is, "Tell me I'm doing great." We say, "I value honesty," but what we mean is, "Be honest only when it doesn't hurt." So we create a culture where truth becomes taboo, and lies become love language. But here's the deeper truth. People don't fear honesty because it's cruel. They fear it because it's clarifying. Once you see what's real, you can't go back to pretending. And most of us would rather stay comfortably confused than painfully clear. In the next part, we'll dive into the psychology behind this, how fear of loss and emotional control turn relationships into a battlefield where truth is the first casualty. And more importantly, how to break free without becoming cold or cruel. The psychology of fear and control. Every emotional game begins with fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being unlovable. Fear that the truth might confirm our deepest insecurity, that maybe, just maybe, we are not enough. When people punish honesty, it's not always cruelty. It's defense. They are protecting the fragile image they've built of themselves. That image might say, "I'm a good partner, I'm desirable, I'm right." But when honesty threatens that image, it feels like death to the ego. So the mind fights back, not with reason, but with emotion, anger, guilt, tears, withdrawal. Here's the hidden mechanism. When one person feels powerless, they use emotion as leverage. They cry, they rage, they freeze, not always to manipulate, but to regain control. In that moment, control feels safer than truth. Because if they can control your words, they can delay facing theirs. But control is an illusion. It buys temporary comfort at the cost of permanent connection. Every time someone silences truth, the relationship becomes less real. Two people might still live together, eat together, even make love, but their souls start drifting apart. The connection loses oxygen because honesty is its only source of air. There's also a deeper layer rooted in childhood. Many of us grew up in homes where truth was punished. A child tells his parent he's scared, and the parent says, "Stop being weak." A daughter expresses anger, and the mother says, "Don't talk back." So the child learns, expressing truth equals losing love. Years later, that same child becomes an adult who fears truth, both hearing it and speaking it. The pattern continues in every relationship. That's why so many adults communicate like scared children wearing grown-up faces. When honesty becomes a threat, manipulation becomes survival. You can see it in subtle forms: the silent treatment, guilt trips, sudden mood swings, selective memory. Each one says, "I can't face the truth, so I'll change how you feel instead." And over time, both people adapt to this dysfunction. The honest one learns to walk on eggshells. The emotional one learns to weaponize vulnerability. Together, they build a house made of fear, a place that looks like love from the outside but feels like prison on the inside. The tragedy is, this fear kills exactly what it's trying to protect. People fear losing love, so they hide the truth, but without truth, love dies anyway. They fear being alone, so they lie to stay together, but that lie creates loneliness inside the relationship. They fear rejection, so they act perfect, but perfection is just another kind of rejection. The rejection of who they really are. Real intimacy doesn't start when everything feels safe. It starts when both people say, "I'd rather face the truth and risk losing this than live in a lie and lose myself." In the next part, we'll talk about what happens when truth is punished long enough, how it reshapes men and women differently, how silence becomes survival, and how to reclaim your voice without turning bitter. Silence, survival, and the death of connection. Silence doesn't arrive suddenly. It's not a decision made in one argument or one night. It grows quietly, like mold in the corners of a house, spreading where truth once lived. When honesty is punished long enough, silence becomes safety. And once that happens, love starts dying in plain sight. Men and women both feel this differently. Many men retreat into logic, working longer hours, burying themselves in routines that don't talk back. They call it focus, but it's really escape. They convince themselves that avoiding conflict is peace. But inside, resentment builds like slow poison. Women, on the other hand, often fill the silence with noise, overanalyzing texts, creating emotional storms, demanding connection that no longer feels safe. They call it passion, but it's really panic. Two people acting out opposite sides of the same wound, both afraid to be unseen, both terrified of being truly seen. When silence replaces truth, communication becomes performance. Every "I'm fine" means I can't say what I really feel. Every "whatever you want" means I've given up trying to be understood. Every "it's not a big deal" means it hurts too much to talk about it again. This is not peace. It's emotional starvation disguised as maturity. I once worked with a couple who hadn't had an honest conversation in years. They smiled at dinner parties, posted happy pictures, said all the right things. But when they sat in silence, the air between them was heavy with everything they had refused to say. He had learned that honesty brought tears. She had learned that silence brought stability. So they built a quiet marriage where truth was the only thing missing, and that absence hollowed them from the inside out. Silence becomes addictive because it's predictable. No truth, no conflict. No conflict, no explosion. But what people don't see is that silence kills passion faster than anger ever could. You can rebuild from an argument. You can't rebuild from indifference. When both people start choosing comfort over confrontation, the relationship becomes a museum, beautiful from the outside, lifeless within. Every time you swallow a truth, a small part of you disappears. First your honesty, then your desire, then your sense of self. Until one day, you look in the mirror and realize you've become a version of yourself that exists only to keep someone else calm. That's not love. That's quiet obedience dressed as loyalty. But here's the good news: silence can be unlearned. The same way people are trained to lie for peace, they can train themselves to speak for freedom. It starts small. One truth said calmly. One boundary held without apology. One moment where you choose clarity over comfort. That's how the voice comes back. In the final part, we'll bring everything together, the path from fear to integrity, from manipulation to maturity. It's not about blaming men or women. It's about reclaiming the lost art of honest love. The return to truth. Building love that can survive honesty. Honesty is not cruelty. It's clarity. And clarity, while uncomfortable, is the foundation of real love. Because love that cannot survive the truth isn't love. It's dependency wearing romance as perfume. The return to truth begins with courage, the courage to let go of control. When you stop trying to manage how others feel about your truth, you finally start living it. Yes, it might cause tension. Yes, it might cost you people who preferred your silence. But those who truly care will grow with you, not against you. Because respect born from truth always lasts longer than comfort born from lies. Love that survives honesty looks different. It doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence. It doesn't require agreement, it requires maturity. It doesn't say, "Tell me what I want to hear." It says, "Tell me what I need to know, and trust me to handle it." That kind of love is not fragile. It bends but doesn't break. It argues but doesn't abandon. It holds space for truth, even when it burns. Let's be clear, being honest doesn't mean being harsh. There is a difference between speaking truth to connect and using truth to wound. The goal isn't to win arguments, it's to build understanding. And understanding cannot grow in the dark. If you want connection, you must invite the light. even when it blinds you for a moment. I've seen couples rebuild from betrayal, anger, even emotional distance, all because they decided to stop lying. They replaced manipulation with maturity, blame with accountability, fear with vulnerability. They realized that love doesn't need to be perfect, it needs to be true. Because truth, once faced, sets both people free, even if they choose different paths afterward. And if you're listening to this right now, wondering where to start small. Speak one truth today. Say what you actually feel, calmly, clearly, without disguise. Let the chips fall where they may. Because your peace will never come from pleasing others. It comes from aligning your words with your reality. Remember this: silence may keep the relationship alive, but truth keeps you alive. And you can't love someone fully while dying inside. You can't build connection while betraying yourself. So choose honesty, even when it costs you comfort. Choose integrity, even when it costs you approval. Because only when you stop lying for love, will you discover the kind of love that doesn't need lies to survive. If this message hits home, don't forget to subscribe. Not for entertainment, but for transformation. Because on this channel, we don't sugarcoat. We rebuild from truth. We grow through discomfort. And we learn that the only kind of love worth keeping is the one that can handle honesty.